In the vastness of the deserts and valleys of the Holy Land, among sun-scorched walls and fields stained with crusader blood, lived a teenage king who defied fate and illness with fierce courage, Baldwin VI of Jerusalem, the leper monarch. His name echoes in the halls of time thanks to unexpected victories, such as the famous Battle of Marj Ayun. But today, we will delve into a much less remembered episode, and precisely because of that, even more revealing of his solitary struggle and the dangers that surrounded the throne of Jerusalem, the Battle of Marj Ayun, fought in the summer of 1179. This battle, so often overshadowed by the great clashes of the Crusades, shows a Baldwin weakened not only physically, but also politically. A king cornered between disloyal allies, relentless enemies, and a disease that consumed his body, but not his will. What happened on the hills of Marj Ayun was more than a simple military defeat. It was the harbinger of a greater crisis that threatened the entire Crusader project in the East. Stay with us until the end of this video to discover how a young king was betrayed by luck, by circumstances, and perhaps even by his own commanders, and how even so, he never stopped fighting. At the end of the 12th century, the Latin kingdom of Jerusalem faced increasingly intense pressures on all fronts. Bounded after the First Crusade, the kingdom was a thin strip of Christian territory amid powerful Muslim states. Saladin, the Ayyubid Sultan of Egypt and Syria, advanced with the declared goal of reconquering Jerusalem. Meanwhile, within the kingdom, disputes between nobles and military orders eroded political cohesion. Baldwin, crowned still a teenager and afflicted with leprosy, had to deal with these challenges while personally commanding the armies and trying to maintain unity in the face of the approaching storm. The year was 1179. Baldwin, then only 18 years old, had already proven his courage against the Muslim enemy in remarkable victories, but now faced a far more complex scenario. Leprosy advanced relentlessly over his body, limiting his movements and forcing him to rely more than ever on his commanders. However, this trust would not always be well rewarded. The Battle of Marj Ayun was fought at a time of internal fragility for the Kingdom of Jerusalem. Saladin, always attentive to the Crusaders' movements, had launched an expedition toward the north of the kingdom, threatening the city of Beirut. In response, Baldwin summoned an army led by three central figures. Himself, despite severe physical limitations, the master of the Templars, Odo of Saint-Amand, and his ambitious brother-in-law, Reynald of Châtillon, Lord of Outremer. The Christian force set out to intercept Saladin's troops in the fertile fields of Marj Ayun, a region south of the Litani River, where the hills merge with narrow valleys, treacherous terrain, especially for a force reliant on heavy cavalry. Initially, the Crusaders were successful. They carried out swift attacks and managed to dislodge small Muslim garrisons. Morale was high, and it seemed that another Christian victory could be celebrated, but everything changed quickly. Saladin, informed of the Crusaders' movements, gathered his main force, composed of swift Turkish horsemen, mounted archers, and experienced Syrian and Egyptian contingents. Instead of engaging directly, he set a trap. The Crusaders, intoxicated by their initial success, allowed their formation to scatter and part of the troops to pursue the retreating enemy. It is at this moment that disaster struck. In a calculated move, Saladin's forces ambushed the Crusaders in a series of coordinated attacks from the hills. The Christian heavy cavalry, caught in unfavorable terrain, lost mobility and was easily surrounded. Panic spread and military discipline quickly unraveled. Odo of Saint-Amand, master of the Templars, was captured during the fighting. His captivity marked a serious symbolic and strategic loss, as the military order played a central role in defending the Latin states. Baldwin, in turn, narrowly escaped capture. There are reports that he was protected by an elite guard, likely remaining Templars and a few loyal nobles. Despite his weakened condition, Baldwin maintained composure during the retreat, which was carried out in an orderly manner, avoiding a total collapse. Reynald of Chatillon, ever reckless, managed to escape with his life, but his actions during the battle raised suspicions of disobedience and imprudence. Many later chroniclers hinted that he may have ignored direct orders from Baldwin or advanced prematurely against Saladin's forces, contributing to the disarray that led to the disaster. The immediate impact of the defeat was devastating. Christian morale plummeted, control over parts of the northern kingdom was compromised, and Saladin was able to resume the offensive with renewed confidence. The capture of Odo of Saint-Amand was celebrated in the Muslim camps as a trophy of victory, and Baldwin found himself politically cornered by his internal adversaries, who began to question his ability to govern. It was not just a loss on the battlefield, it was an open wound in the legitimacy of the crusader throne, a cruel warning that the Muslim presence was more threatening than ever, and that not even the inspiring figure of the leper king was enough to ensure stability. The battle clearly demonstrated that time was no longer on the side of the Crusaders, and that Saladin was playing a much shrewder game of chess than many were prepared to face. Marj Ayun was thus marked as the battle that proved that even heroes can be abandoned by luck, and that, on the chessboard of the Holy Land, faith and bravery do not always triumph over strategy and cunning. The defeat at Marj Ayun had effects that extended far beyond the battlefield. For Baldwin, the consequences were profound, both personally and politically. He already knew that his body was slowly giving in to leprosy. His hands no longer held the reins firmly, his feet barely supported the weight of his armor. But now, more than ever, he realized that he was also losing control over the direction of the kingdom. One of the most immediate impacts was the loss of prestige before the kingdom's barons. The crusader aristocracy was notoriously fragmented, composed of lords from different backgrounds and often with volatile loyalties. Many of these nobles began to question the leper king's ability to conduct military affairs and protect the kingdom against Saladin's growing power. Pressures emerged for Baldwin to appoint a permanent regent or to delegate military responsibilities to other commanders. This tension rekindled internal disputes. Count Raymond III of Tripoli, a historical ally of Baldwin, but also an ambitious figure, saw in the crisis an opportunity to increase his influence. On the other hand, the controversial figure of Reynald of Chatillon also emerged tarnished. Many blamed his aggressiveness and lack of coordination for the catastrophe at Marj Ayun. However, as lord of strategic lands in the eastern part of the kingdom and known for his military charisma, Reynald retained support among the more belligerent sectors of the nobility and the Frankish population. On the diplomatic front, Saladin wasted no time. The victory at Marj Ayun strengthened his position among the region's Muslims. He further consolidated his authority as the legitimate leader of the jihad against the Crusaders, uniting former rivals under his banner and solidifying previously fragile alliances. The prestige he gained allowed him to attract troop contingents from Damascus, Aleppo, and even from Bedouin tribes of Mesopotamia, creating a truly unified Islamic bloc around his leadership. For Baldwin, the only viable path was to try to contain Saladin's political advance with internal maneuvers. Even weakened, the young king showed impressive lucidity. He convened the Haute Cour, the council of the kingdom's nobles, and despite the divisions, managed to maintain his position through a balance between factions. He appointed Guy of Lusignan as military commander, seeking a figure capable of uniting different parties. Later, this same Guy would marry Sibylla, Baldwin's sister, a gesture that would seal his rise to power, albeit in an unstable manner. The memory of Marj Ayun, however, did not fade easily. The defeat exposed the kingdom's structural vulnerabilities, its reliance on fragile alliances, its elongated and indefensible territory, and its inability to sustain prolonged campaigns against mobile forces like those of Saladin. For the Muslims, the battle was a kind of rehearsal for future confrontations. For the Christians, a grim omen that the days of glory had begun to darken. Even so, Baldwin did not yield. Even with open wounds in body and soul, he launched a series of measures aimed at reorganizing the kingdom's defense. He reinforced fortresses at the most vulnerable points, such as Karak and Montreal, encouraged alliances with the Armenians, and even sought to negotiate temporary truces with Saladin to buy time. In his feverish and tormented mind, the fall was not the end, but a call to resistance. Curiously, the episode of Marj Ayun is seldom remembered in the more popular accounts of the Crusades. Perhaps because it challenges the heroic narrative that so often attracts readers and listeners, that of the young king defeating evil despite his illness. In Marj Ayun, however, we see the other side of the legend, the defeated but not vanquished hero, the sick king, yet still capable of commanding and inspiring. This battle is, in many ways, more revealing than the victories, for it shows the true nature of Baldwin, a ruler who, even surrounded by external enemies and internal betrayals, never gave up fighting for his people and his faith. It is possible that, on that field covered in dust and bodies, Baldwin felt the hand of death closer than ever. But he survived. And with him, for a while longer, the ideal of the Latin Kingdom of Jerusalem also survived. Even in defeat, the flame of crusader resistance was kept alive by the leper king. Marjayun was a fall, yes, but it was also a warning, a call for the Christians of the Holy Land to prepare for a greater, more decisive, and more tragic clash that was yet to come. The Battle of Marj Ayun, so often forgotten in history books, reveals one of the most human and profound moments in Baldwin's journey. It was not there that he shone as a victor, nor that he achieved glory on the battlefield, but it was there that his kingly soul revealed itself in all its dignity. Surrounded by strategic errors, veiled betrayals, and the constant threat of his disease, he endured. He stood firm, and he prepared the kingdom, even in weakness, for the challenges ahead. In this episode, we see how true leadership is not measured only by victories, but by the ability to persist in the face of misfortune. Baldwin, the leper king, may have lost the field of Marj Ayun, but he did not lose his courage nor his faith. His figure remains a rare symbol of lucidity and sacrifice in times of crisis, a distant echo of nobility amid the chaos of the Crusades. If this dive into history touched you, like the video, share it with those who love the Middle Ages and subscribe to the channel. There are still many episodes in the life of this extraordinary king that deserve to be told until the next journey through the Holy Land.